Hello, I'm Adam, and I'm here to talk to you today about what I call the corrupt left-wing establishment. And you may have heard me use this term in some of my past videos, and I wanted to talk about it specifically, why I use it, and why you need to be aware of it, what it is, and how it operates, and what its agenda is. Now, when I call something the corrupt left-wing establishment, I'm not simply name calling, I'm being descriptive about a very real phenomena in our modern society and in our modern politics. So to understand modern American politics, you have to be aware of this phenomenon. And again, I'm not name calling, I'm being very descriptive. What I'm talking about is how these institutions of America have organized themselves to be very outcome focused. They're not honest brokers of their traditional role in American society anymore. They're dishonest about their agenda, and they're very outcome focused. And what that means is that they want to create a certain outcome in society politically. And they work together mostly. What I wrote here is they are politically incestuous, and they cross-pollinate, is what I call it. Meaning, these people all know each other, they work together, and there's sort of a revolving door between these institutions, again, towards a specific political outcome, which is the primary, maybe the sole goal of these organizations, at the total expense of their traditional role in society. And people say, oh, this is a big conspiracy, right? That there's this big cabal and meeting in a dark room somewhere. It's actually not usually a conspiracy. It's a consensus of a certain elite that meet in college, are indoctrinated by the same professors, very intentionally indoctrinated. They come out, they share the same worldview, they go to the same parties, they vacation together, they intermarry each other, they have a revolving door career-wise amongst these institutions. So again, I wouldn't say this is a conspiracy theory, this is the consensus on the political elite. And what it is of course the universities and the school system, and I'm going to make individual videos about each one of these and talk more about it. But before I started doing that, I wanted to talk about this establishment as a group and how they operate. And then I'll make a video about each one of these in the near future. And the first is the universities and the school systems. This is where it starts the indoctrination politically. And it starts with a very false worldview. And totally opposite of what traditionally has been taught as American history and as world history in the last 30 or 40 years. There's been a couple of generations completely politically indoctrinated. And you talk to a college-educated young person today, maybe say under 30 years old or 35, and they're totally immersed in this, and they have a totally false picture about the United States in world history in general. For instance, when I was in graduate school a number of years ago, I got this prep book, Advanced Placement Examination Test Preparation. And what this is it's given to high school students to determine course credit and or placement level in college. So it's a very important test prep book, and these are people going to college. And when you prepare for this test, I just thought it was interesting what they cover and what they don't cover. For instance, Thomas Jefferson, the Founding Fathers, and why their work was important and significant, why it was unique, is not covered at all. In fact, Thomas Jefferson's words are not covered at all. The Bill of Rights gets one sentence, then the Declaration of Independence, 2 sentences. Well, what do they focus on? Well, just some interesting examples. Watergate gets a whole page. The Ku Klux Klan gets 2/3 of a page. And the biggest section was on the New Deal, which gets 23 pages. So it's interesting what they cover and what they don't cover. And I think they leave the covering of the Founding Fathers in America to the actual classroom, where parents won't really be there to see it. And they'll teach that America, of course, is evil and racist, imperialist, sexist. They'll focus on slavery. They'll actually accuse the United States of genocide and all kinds of horrible crimes in history. And that's how it'll be covered and indoctrinated. And if you talk to a young person with a college education, you'll see that this is how they think and what they've been indoctrinated. I always call it, some of these people are the finest indoctrinations money can buy. Now, in the college system, in the school system in general, if you're learning hard sciences, that's fantastic. That's what you should focus on. Avoid the classes that focus on history and any of the other liberal arts. They should be avoided. In fact, I would say if you can avoid them completely, avoid them completely. But the colleges won't let you do that. They want to make sure you're indoctrinated before they send you out to the world. And that is their focus. That is, and the liberal arts and history and all that, that is their focus, not on an education, but on indoctrination. You have to avoid this. It's harmful. But I would say, if all someone's going to do is get a liberal arts education on most American campuses today, and certainly the Ivy League, I would say I would pay money not to go. If they made me go and it was free, I would pay money not to go. That's how harmful it is. It's better to remain completely ignorant than have a completely false worldview. That's going to lead to your eventual the destruction of the United States and disintegration, a wholly changing of society to the left-wing vision of America. But they're just one. They're probably the most important, but they're just one element of the corrupt left-wing establishment. And again, I say corrupt. I'm being descriptive because these people are not honest brokers. When you go there, you're not arriving to have a free dialogue of enlightened minds and learning. They say it is education, the lighting of a fire or the filling of a bucket. This is very definitely the filling of a bucket with very specific agenda at these schools. So they are corrupt, and there's no doubt they are left-wing. The campuses deliberately keep out any professor that they suspect of conservative political leanings, or they certainly won't get tenure. And they are an establishment because, again, they dominate. They dominate the agenda, and they have, again, this outcome. And they work together to create an establishment where it's very hard to dissent without having very real consequences, career-wise and personally as well. So it's the university and the school system are part of the corrupt left-wing establishment. You have to know this when you're dealing with these institutions, when you go there, when your kids go there, and alert them and warn them and try to avoid as much of this as you can, besides, of course, the hard science, chemistry, physics, biology, things like that. The news media, of course, is part of the corrupt left-wing establishment. There are some news organizations which do try to present the news, meaning if they teach a false view of history and of politics, the news media is sort of the current situation. They deliberately present a false picture of the world, and it's not hard to see. I could tell you every story that will be covered and every story which will not be covered in the news media, ABC, NBC, CNN, PBS. We could go right down the list. I'll tell you everything they'll cover and everything they won't cover and how they'll cover it. It's not hard to figure out. Again, they're not honest brokers, and this is corruption. It's not simply bias. Most people are biased in some way, and if they're honest about it, they recognize it, but still try to be fair and present an honest picture. This goes way beyond that. This is a corruption where they will deliberately try to prevent news from getting out. If they don't like the story, or if it conflicts with the left-wing agenda, which is their ultimate outcome, it will not see the light of day, or it will be covered absolutely minimal. If they feel that they have to report it, it'll be quickly stated and then disappear. And again, I'll tell you every story that will fall into that category, and every story which will be highlighted. Again, it's how it coincides with the left-wing agenda and the left-wing worldview. Again, they're promoting a certain worldview that they want you to accept, how they want you to see the world. And that's their primary goal, not news. They are not news organizations. They are propaganda arms of the corrupt left-wing establishment. And you need to know that when you watch the TV shows, what they are going to cover, what they're not going to cover, because it's very dishonest. And I'm going to make a video just on the news media and give you plenty of examples. Hollywood entertainment, this is sort of, through art. They want to, by the way, in the news media, one thing, sometimes it is a conspiracy. There are organizations of media journalists who actually collude to create certain stories and spin them all together the same way. There was a recent story, I think they were going to all smear Sarah Palin the same way, come at her in a coordinated way to be a more effective campaign. And they all got together in emails and basically conspired to how they were going to slant their stories, again, for a political outcome. So it's a consensus of this elite establishment, but it's also actually sometimes very blatant conspiracies. And Hollywood and the entertainment industries are the same way. They'll always smear people who disagree or go afoul of the left-wing establishment. Saturday Night Live, you can see who's going to be smeared and who's not going to be smeared, and how they're going to be portrayed, who's going to be ridiculed. And this has a long history, by the way, in art. The political establishment ridiculing their enemies. It falls into Saul Alinsky's philosophy. Of course, Barack Obama's a big Alinsky, and a lot of them are. They share their ideas and methods across the establishment. And, you know, for instance, I remember one, Linda Tripp, you know, she was one who was just trying to tell her story during the Clinton years, during the Clinton impeachment for perjury. And Saturday Night Live just ripped her apart. And what did she do wrong? She was subpoenaed and had to tell the truth. And they released, of course, they dug up her supposedly sealed Department of Defense files and released it again to ridicule her. But I mean, it's so common. I just bring up that one example. And then Sarah Palin, of course, they rip her apart. But there's so many others. It's almost the list. We'd be here all day. And they're part of it. It's very organized. I remember a couple of years ago they got together to promote a whole week that just focused on global warming. And there was bills in Congress that were important that week, so they coordinated it. So that week they would all, on their shows, promote a global warming agenda to create an environment to help steamroll these bills through Congress. And it was, you know, very coordinated, and they all got together and did it. And again, it's part of the establishment. Many federal judges are not honest brokers. They're not there to dispense American justice based on Constitution. They're part of the left-wing establishment. Again, they're there to promote an outcome. And I'm going to talk about this very explicitly. I'm going to make a video about that and show you that they often coordinate with the political wing of our government to figure out ways to reach a specific outcome. And these judges, many of them don't believe in the Constitution. They believe in the left-wing agenda. Now, I'll give you many examples. It's really shocking and frightening. Again, the left-wing agenda is the outcome that they're working towards in association with the other wings of the corrupt left-wing establishment. And these watchdog organizations, again, they're very dishonest about their agenda. They're supposedly there to promote truth, but really they were put together to silence political dissent. That's their agenda. That's why they were organized, and that's what they do. And many of these other watchdog groups are really just you know, fronts for an agenda. They're funded, a lot of them, by the same people and organized by the same people that cross-pollinate, again, in and out of these different organizations. Again, creating an establishment, a union, a bulwark of against what they do not like and in favor of what they do like, and to steamroll society in a certain direction. And again, many judges, I just flat out don't believe in the U.S. Constitution and want to work around it, and that can be very clever. It's not hard to spin something and create a rationale for taking away constitutional rights and just getting around the Constitution. I always say the Constitution, it's, you know, it's can't defend itself. It needs people to defend it. If you ever see Raiders of the Lost Ark, I like the scene where the Ark of the Covenant opens up and shoots laser beams out and kills all the Nazis. Unfortunately, the Constitution can't jump up off the table and start defending itself. It needs people, and if people don't believe in it, then they'll just simply get around it with different rationales and create words and political justifications for reinterpreting the Constitution. For instance, there are 4 judges on the court right now that just do not believe in the Second Amendment. They don't even think you have a right to have a gun in your own home. Just flat out, you don't have a right to do it. And there's 4, and if there was one more, we wouldn't have a Second Amendment right. It would already be gone. But that could be coming down the pike very soon. Again, these judges do not believe in the Constitution. They believe in the left-wing agenda. And they'll get around the Constitution very easily if they get the chance. I'll tell you how every judge is going to vote on almost every case. Some of the things they've done in the past, and I'll explain to you some of the rationales. It's pretty shocking and amazing. The identity racial groups, of course, are part of this as well. Sometimes they're the tip of the spear. They can go after people for the slightest phrase that can be seen, that can be spun as racist. Then, of course, they'll make the charge, and then the news media, Hollywood, they'll run with it, and they'll create the perception in society that you're an evil person, racist, for some phrase that is ridiculous, or you make it passing, or but it only takes one mistake to bring you down. And these watchdog groups, the racial identity groups, and it'll then go from there to the media and Hollywood to bring you down, to bring you into compliance with the left-wing agenda. So again, they work together, and it's just like clockwork. You'll see the watchdogs recently went after Rush Limbaugh, and before I've seen them go after Ines. And then the racial warlords of the identity groups will pile on. The news media, Hollywood will pick up. You will become persona non grata. Your voice will be silenced, which is the goal. Again, the goal is not to promote truth. The goal is to silence opposition, silence dissent. Again, this is an establishment working together for this outcome. And you need to understand that this is an establishment to understand the world that we live in today. And if you're a freedom-loving American, this is the opposition. If you're a freedom-loving individual American, you have to understand what you're up against and how these people operate. No, these are not honest brokers that are controlling these institutions anymore. And I'm going to go through each one in a separate video and give you a specific example. But I wanted to talk about them as a group and tell you why I use that term, which I really like and I'm very proud of, and I hope other people will use it as much as they like as well. And of course, they all come together in the Democratic Party, which is, the main organization for driving the left-wing agenda. At least they're honest about it. That's their goal. But these are other just sort of, they sort of fit into the overall establishment. They're just part of it, but they're the most, at least they're the most honest and visible part with the left-wing agenda, what they want to promote. Sometimes they're not as upfront about their agenda, but at least this is where it comes together here and in the courts. But they're all part of it. They're all part of the same movement. And you have to, when you deal with a college or the news media or you're watching entertainment, you have to understand that these are not, they're not there just to entertain. Sure, they are, and to make money, but their agenda is left-wing, and a lot of the shows are designed with a left-wing message. I might do some actually movie reviews and talk about that too. And so I wanted to talk to you about it in general, but I'm going to talk about it each one in a separate video. It may take several weeks or even a couple of months to make them all, but I am going to make them all. I have some other videos I want to make mixed in there too, but I'm going to go through each one because it's very important as a freedom-loving American to understand what you're up against when dealing with these entities and institutions. They're not honest brokers. They have a very specific agenda, and it's focused on a very specific outcome. Don't be fooled into thinking, when you're watching the mainstream media, as it's sometimes called, that you're getting news. It's very specific propaganda. There are things they absolutely will not cover, and there are things they will cover and highlight, again, based on their worldview and the left-wing agenda. And I want people to understand it, which is why I'm making this video. Thank you.